Shalom, I give all underglory and praises to YAHAWAH WA YAHAWASHI, Rakak I give double honors to our apostles and elders, great millstone. Salutations to all you sincere brothers pushing this word across the four corners of the world. Just a quick lesson going into news updates and biblical prophecies. And this is from nationalnews.com, and the title says, "The temporary collapse of Texas is foreshadowing the total collapse of the U.S." And this was published on February the 21st, 2021. It says, "We are getting a very short preview of what will eventually happen to the U.S. as a whole. America's infrastructure is aging and crumbling. Our power grids were never intended to support so many people. Our water systems are a complete joke, and it has become utterly apparent that we will be completely lost if a major long-term national emergency ever struck." So going back to the key phrase right here, it says America's infrastructure is aging and crumbling, which leads me to the book of Isaiah, the 14th chapter and 11th verse. And it says, "Thy pomp is brought down to the grave." And that pomp represents the pride and the ego of this so-called white man, who are the biblical Edomites. And that main hub that they glorify so much is America, known as Babylon the Great, according to the scriptures. So YAHAWAH WA YAHAWASHI is bringing down that pride and that high ego of this so-called white man through his empire America. And you read into the book of Isaiah, the 26th chapter, it references America as that lofty city, because America exalts itself with much pride and ego. That's why it's known as Babylon the Great. It's great in wickedness, it's great in deceits, it's great in perverseness, and it's great in pride. So it says, "Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials." And pursuant to the book of Isaiah, the 24th chapter, how it talks about America being that city of confusion. And one of the prophecies that's going to happen within America is that the noise of the tabrets is going to cease. So all that mirth, that partying, all these different festivities, YAHAWAH WA YAHAWASHI is bringing that type of vibration to a very near end. So the noise of thy vials is going to be brought down as well. And it says, "The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee." And that's going to America's infrastructure. And you go into America's infrastructure report card, I think it's like at a D+. And that's concerning the railroads, the airports, the highways, the bridges, the water systems, and the list goes on. Because this place is totally decaying. It's breaking down, it's collapsing. So we're seeing that corrosion that's happening within this great empire. And that's how we know through the spirit and power of YAHAWAH WA YAHAWASHI that we are at the end of this so-called white man's rulership, for all these things to come out now. So that's biblical prophecy right there. So going back to the article, and it says, "Texas has immense wealth and vast energy resources, but now it's being called a failed state. If it can't even handle a few days of cold weather, what is the rest of America going to look like when things really start to get chaotic in this country?" And I definitely believe through the spirit that these elites use Texas as a test trial. And that's what they do before they actually bring the full drama to a place. Also to know that Texas is considered as a hostile state because they want to withdraw from the United States. So that could be another reason for these elites to go ahead and target Texas and just let them know who really is the boss. You never know how it works. But at the end of the day, we know that YAHAWAH WA YAHAWASHI is putting that spirit of division amongst these Americans. Because you have a lot of these Americans, especially in Texas, still have power outages. They're in severe water crisis, running out of food, things of that sort. So now they're looking at their government with their evil eye. And that's causing a lot of separation between your so-called United States of America. I'm gonna jump down because this is a pretty interesting point. And it says, "Most Americans don't realize that much of the rest of the world actually has much better power infrastructure than we do. Just check out these numbers. In Japan, the average home sees only 4 minutes of power outages per year." That's crazy, just only 4 minutes. And it says in the American Midwest, the figure is 92 minutes per year. In the Northeast, it's 214 minutes. All those figures cover only regular outages and not those caused by extreme weather or fires. And it says, "As our population has grown and our infrastructure has aged, performance has just gotten worse and worse. In fact, things ran much more smoothly all the way back into the mid-1980s. And it goes on to say, "America is literally crumbling all around us, and it's getting worse with each passing year." And that's pursuant to biblical prophecies again. That's how you know that we are at the end of this so-called white man's rulership, the end of his age, his sovereignty on this earth. And that leads me to the book of 2nd Ezra, the 9th chapter and the 1st verse. And it says, he answered me then and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself. So you see what's going on with current events, current news, and you measure it along with the scriptures via the biblical prophecies. That's that measuring rod. And it says, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before. And now we are seeing some very strange times in these last days, where most of the world can't really explain what's going on. But through the spirit and power of YAHAWAH, by us knowing some of the secrets of the Heavenly Father through his son YAHAWASHI, that's how we can measure thou the time diligently in itself. And it says, then shalt thou understand that it's the very same time when the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. Therefore, when there should be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world. That's why you're seeing so many protests going throughout the whole earth. A lot of people are rioting, protesting, a lot of different social wars, class wars, and pretty soon it's going to lead to all these different race wars. But that's also pursuant to biblical prophecies as well. And it says, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. For like as all that is made in the world have a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest. And pursuant to the book of Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, everything, there's a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. So now we're at that time that YAHAWAH, he's going to pluck up America, known as Babylon the Great, which he has planted. And only YAHAWAH can be able to do that, a divine power, not no type of human contact. That's going to be divine supernatural power. And that's why we're seeing these type of strange events going throughout the whole world, because this is going to lead to this so-called white man going out of rulership, falling from his great empire. And this was another article I came across from nationalnews.com, and the title says, food prices will climb in 2021 as inflation accelerates. And I was watching a video not too long ago concerning Joe Biden signing to an executive order and how he wants to close the Dakota Access Pipeline. And that's going to lead into increased farming and transportation costs. And all that hell is going to befall upon the so-called U.S. consumer, where the food supply prices are going to spike. It's going to inflate. So all that is happening in the midst of a so-called pandemic, where you have high unemployment rates, you have a lot of school closings due to these different lockdown orders, where that's causing more children to be at home. And while more children are at home now, that means they are eating more. So that's making it hard for a lot of these different Americans to make ends meet. And I was just reading through the different comments on this particular video, and you have a lot of people blaming on the Democrats because it's a so-called Democrat president in charge right now. And they don't know that the so-called Democrats, the Republicans, all of them are in the same bed together. It's like WWE, but they portray to you all when they come on TV like they're going against one another, like one is more righteous than the other. So these Americans, as you know, for the majority part, they are in gross darkness, as it says in the book of Isaiah, the 60th chapter. So they don't really know the full details how these different American politicians are in the same cahoot together. But looking at face value, they taking this very literal, and they are blaming Democrats for this. You have a lot of comments talking about impeaching Biden already. So through the spirit, what is that leading into? Which leads me to the book of 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter and the 14th verse. And it says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein. And you read previously up in this chapter, it talks about how Egypt should mourn. And the modern day Egypt is speaking about America. And it says, for the sword and the destruction draw nigh, and one people should stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. So that's going to these different class wars, these different social wars. And pretty soon it's going to lead into racial wars as well, because all that pursues to biblical prophecies. And here's the point, verse 16. For there should be sedition among men. So it's going to be insurrection, rebellions, revolts, and invading one another. They should not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions should stand in their power. Because these different Americans are getting very enraged of the current situation that's going on within America, especially what's going on in the crisis in Texas, where you had this so-called U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. He left in the midst of it, which I believe it was set up. But at the same time, like I stated earlier, you have a lot of these Americans, they take these things literal. Like they actually look at it from face value, not from a spiritual standpoint. So they really headstrong about overthrowing Ted Cruz as being a U.S. Senator. and all these different other government officials are in league with him. So all this is leading to sedition among men and how they should not regard their kings nor princes. So they're going to be trying to overthrow these different senators, these different mayors, governors, all these different politicians. And that's why YAHAWASHI stated this in the book of Luke, the 11th chapter and the 17th verse. But he knoweth their thoughts, said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and a house divided against a house falleth. And America is that kingdom. It's that house that's being divided. And this is supposed to be the so-called United States. And just look at Texas alone, where they trying to secede from the Union. So that's causing a lot of separations and divisions right there alone. So every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and a house divided against a house falleth. If Satan also be divided against himself, how shall his kingdom stand? So with all these different indifferences, these separations and divisions in America, all these different social divisions, race division, religion division, all that's being divided in this so-called United States of America. So through the spirit and power of YAHAWAH, as you measure time diligently in itself, that's how we know that we are at the end of the so-called white man's rule, the end of his age, his chapter. So he's not going to be able to stand, as it says, a little leaven it the whole lump. And as you see through this title right here, it says the temporary collapse of Texas is foreshadowing the total collapse of the U.S. So if these things happen in a great state like Texas, how much more in these other minor states? So that's how you know that this place is on a great collapse. And this is the book of Luke, the 12th chapter and the 49th verse. I am come to send fire on the earth. And this is YAHAWASHI himself speaking. And what will I if it be already kindled? So before YAHAWASHI bring his war on this earth, it's already going to be social wars, all types of riots going on, just nothing but chaos in the streets of America. And not to mention, you're going to have that main war, which is World War III, that's going on into the so-called Middle East. So that's why YAHAWASHI stated, I am come to send fire on the earth, and what will I if it be already kindled? Meaning that all these different pre-wars before YAHAWASHI's second coming, it's going to be more inflamed, more engulfed. So he's going to flame it more and more when he comes back with his fire. And this is Jeremiah 51:7. Babylon had been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, and Babylon again is referencing America. And that golden cup represents how everybody has drinking that Babylonian wine, and they got drunk off of it. They loved it. So now we coming at the time frame that YAHAWAH is going to raise a certain spirit in these other nations, and they really going to see the shame of America's glory. And they really going to start going against America, starting with America's so-called allies. And it says that made all the earth drunken with its democracy, all these different policies and legislations, because all these other nations are enticed by that Babylonian wine, and they want to pursue America. They want to be just like America. Until YAHAWAH is going to stir up their spirit within these different nations. And it says the nations have drunken of our wine, therefore the nations are mad. So now they're coming to see the real truth of America. As it says in the book of Revelation, the 18th chapter, how America seated as a queen. So she presents herself as an elegant woman. But if you really just look into America, you see how filthy this place really is. You see how the ways of America really is. According to the book of Ezekiel, 24th chapter, it references this place as scum, meaning the filth of this place. And that's from a physical aspect, a morally aspect, and a spiritual aspect. And it says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her take balm for her pain, and so be she may be healed. So your different stimulus packages, your different protesting, all these different things that you try to do to unite these so-called Americans back together as they once was, it will never happen again. These things are playing out for a reason, because the Heavenly Father Yahweh is about to send his only begotten son YAHAWASHI to take that crown away from this so-called white man. And that's why this place is suddenly falling. That's why the mirth of the tabrets are ceasing. The love of many being waxed cold, iniquity being abounded, the separations within the different family households, earthquakes in diverse places, all these so-called natural disasters, more and more UFO sightings being reported. All this is ushering into YAHAWASHI's second return back on this earth. And that's how you know through the spirit that we are in the very near brink of America's collapse. So it says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed, how for her take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. And we know through biblical prophecy that America is not going to be able to reinvent herself. This place was already set up ages ago by a higher power to be destroyed. And it says, verse 9, we will have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one into his own country. And it's talking about these other nations, because they're going to get all the money they can from America, and they're going to leave and go back to their own homelands. And let us go every one to his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. And that's pursuant to the book of Revelation, the 18th chapter, how the Most High is allowing America's sin to reach unto the heavens. And it also says how he remembered her iniquities. So that's why all these things are taking place right now in America before that great fall. And as you know, with America, it exalts herself with that great pride, that great ego, that lofty city. And according to the book of Proverbs, the 16th chapter and the 18th verse, pride goeth before destruction. So that's how you know through the spirit that America is on its way out of here. So with that being said, through the spirit leads me right back to the title of this article. The temporary collapse of Texas is foreshadowing the total collapse of the U.S. And like I stated in a previous video, I definitely believe that these elites had a hand in this so-called winter storm. But ultimately, through the spirit, we know it's the hand of YAHAWAH. As it says in the book of Proverbs, the 21st chapter, that the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of waters, he turneth it whithersoever he will. So at the end of the day, it's still the agenda, the purpose, the will of YAHAWAH to fulfill biblical prophecies. So this type of major crisis can happen in a major state like Texas. How much more of these minor states in America? And that's how you know through the spirit that we are at that brink collapse of America. For all these things to be happening in these times. So Lord willing, you all is edified. Y'all stay strong. Shalom.